Hi, you're listening to She Shield, your one-stop pod for all topics personal safety. I'm your host, Sophia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. Before we start today, if you could go ahead and take a moment to rate the podcast, that would help so much. I always forget to say that. And if you'd like to see the full version of this episode, we have a super awesome guest today. So you can head over to YouTube. You'll be able to see both video and audio as opposed to only audio wherever you're listening. This episode is sponsored by Big Tex Ordnance, your soon-to-be favorite retailer for all of your firearms needs. BTO believes in only selling high-quality gear for responsibly armed citizens, as well as providing pre- and post-sale support. BTO values firearms training and supports firearms instructors nationwide. They even pay for their own staff to train with high-level instructors to ensure that when you as the consumer reach out, you are taken care of. Today, we have Scott Jedlinski of the Modern Samurai Project here for a take two. He was nice enough to come back on the episode because we lost the original file. So I'm so thankful for that. Hopefully, I can articulate some questions a little bit better today. But Scott, seriously, thank you so much for your time. I would love for you to introduce yourself to the listeners.
My name's Scott Jedlinski. I am the owner and lead instructor of Modern Samurai Project. We focus on fundamentals and performance of the red dot pistol and the AIWB concealed position. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes, and you just got back from teaching at the Big Tex range, correct?
Yep, I had 2 classes back to back, 2-day red dot and then a 3-day AIWB into red dot.
Oh my gosh, what a great class. How did it go?
Fantastic.
Fantastic? Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, everyone got that.
Lovely. Okay, wonderful. I absolutely love the BTO range. And since, of course, they're a sponsor of the pod, I thought I would throw a little bit more out there about them. But it's in Conroe, Texas. For those of you listening, if you ever have a chance to visit that, it's wonderful. So I'd love to kick off the episode with a pretty general question. Of course, this podcast is intended for shooters at varying levels, everyone from the beginner to, law enforcement officers getting into competition shooting sports, right? Super committed people. So you specialize in instructing the use of red dot equipped pistols. What are the key advantages of using a red dot sight for both tactical professionals and civilian self-defense practitioners?
There's really not a difference between the two end users, right? The advantages are it better facilitates you looking at the target, at the threat with both eyes open and getting more information, and more information's always better. Not that we didn't do amazing things with iron sights, but that's just not the way we see the 3 focal planes or, 2 focal planes or whatever. The 1 focal plane shooting is so that you can aim better, more situational awareness, all those other great things, whether it be self-defense, work, or competition.
Wonderful. Absolutely. And when you say it's not how we normally see, would you be willing to give an example of kind of everyday life and how we see?
Well, yeah, you're always focused on the target. When you drive, you are road focused, not windshield focused. When you open a door handle, right, you're handle focused, not hand focused. And unfortunately, with irons, the way they're set up, and they were a great solution for the time. I think it was taught a bit inefficiently, right, with that whole front sight focus, because that's not what we're made to. That's not how we're made to see. And people got really, 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 really good at seeing the wrong way. On a side note, the dirty little secret in most competition shootings, those guys that shot iron sights at a very high level still shot target focus, right? But what they're learning is it wasn't truly target focus. It was more of a soft focus between the front sight and the target. Well, you have the dot that projects the dot onto the glass and out into space, into infinity, and you can truly be target focused. The problem is because those people that were taught front sight focus for so long, they've learned to see the wrong way, so that when they present, their draw's not efficient, right? Because they're looking at the sight and they can manage it on the way up or the way down or whatnot. And then, they get the dot and they're supposed to be target focused, but because they're looking at in front of their face, they become dot focused. And when you become dot focused, the actual target blurs and morphs and things of that nature, especially on small, difficult targets. So the transition basically for people that have shot irons for a long time to the dot is how to see the correct way, right? The way they do everything else, and how to do maybe a more efficient presentation. Because the one disadvantage that the dot has maybe over irons, that irons are always in your peripheral on the presentation, not where the dot is not, because it's in that enclosed in that housing, and it becomes much more, your draw and your presentation and your transitions becomes much more precise. But when you learn how to master that, the performance benefits cannot be debated. Even though people try,
right?
It can't be debated. So,
absolutely. And I mean, nowadays there are so many red dot options, from like the Holosun EPS to some of like the Romeo compact series. I mean, I feel like it's so easy to throw a red dot on your firearm, and
stop buying small dots though.
Yeah.
Why?
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll ask you that. So I ask you.
Ooh, please.
Why would you ever want to buy a small red dot?
Okay. So first of all, concealability is something I'm thinking of, but it's the difference between, for example, maybe a Holosun 509T compared to the EPS. Probably not that noticeable of a difference. It feels smaller, and that's probably a little bit of a mental thing when it comes to feeling like it's more concealable. The other reason I've heard is that while it's because it's lower, there's less. I don't even know if this is worth stating. I don't want to misinform anyone.
Well, if you've heard it, you've heard it. I mean, it doesn't mean your conviction. You just heard it, right?
Right. I guess I've heard if the red dot is more compact and lower, there isn't as big of a difference with the shot placement when aiming with like a larger red dot versus a smaller
height over
one.
bore.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. Well, let's address that one first. Everybody,
Please.
It's not a rifle. We're not looking at 2.5 inch difference between the bore and where the dot is.
Okay.
It's probably 0.3 of an inch over, even if you have a high SRO, maybe it's half an inch. It's not that critical. People stop thinking about and talking about shooting and go shoot. Right. The second one is if you are printing because of your optic, it's not the optic's fault. That means you have a shitty holster. Okay.
Yeah.
So guys,
that's a good point.
More gun, more better. More optic, more better.
Okay.
My personal conviction, you all do what you want to do. So, but
absolutely.
I'm not saying the EPS is a great optic and stuff like that.
Right.
But for every reason the EPS is a great optic, the 509T is a better optic. For every reason the 509T is a better optic, the 507 comp is a better one. Right.
I do like my 507 comp.
So yeah, learn how to put on your holster better and dress appropriately, and go from there.
Absolutely. I've been able to conceal my Glock 19 with a 507T just as well as I have my my Rose with the Holosun EPS or the Romeo X, which I believe is their compact. Don't quote me there. But I've been able to make some pretty challenging outfits work just because of the Filster Enigma. So that's a really great point. Absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. I think the idea of talking more about it rather than doing it, that's such a real thing, especially in the social media space. It's so easy to present yourself as something by talking about gear when really we're losing sight of the important part. So appreciate you bringing us back to reality there.
Here's the other thing. Gear is very important. Don't let people say, "Oh, it's the Indian, not the arrow." Well, a badass Indian is even more betterer with a badass arrow. All right. So stop discounting equipment, people, because if your equipment doesn't work, it doesn't matter about your skill set or your mindset. Your shit's not working, so you can't do anything. So equipment matters.
Yes. Absolutely. I don't know about you, but most of my horror dreams are like my gun comes out to presentation and then I can't shoot it because the trigger is locked or jams or something. And then, I wake up and I'm like, oh man, how long has it been since I've cleaned my gun? And I start thinking about that. So it's definitely sitting in my subconscious as.
And just understand not all for example, holsters and stuff like that. I mean, a gun should work pretty much for everybody, but different size grips and things of that nature. Right. But let's look at holsters, right? Like, for example, you mentioned the Filster Enigma, right? I think when that first started to develop, I still shot for Filster and stuff. And I think it is a game changer for the right people. Yeah. Okay. Here's where that holster I think is great and people should consider it. If you are like built like you, thin, up and down, right? Everything's great. It can rest on your hip bones and you're fantastic. You can adjust everything. On a person like me, right, where I'm more round and stuff like that, and I've got, old man love handles. Actually, I don't have them anymore. I used to have them. But for example, on that type of person, the Enigma is not that great because it either has to sit below that person's love handles or above, right? So it's either too low or too high. Same piece of equipment, different advantages for different people. You know what I mean? Right. So this, just something to think about when you're thinking about equipment, but equipment matters.
Absolutely. I'm just curious, have you tried working with like peaks and valleys, like shifting it over left or right? Has any of that helped or not really?
With what?
With the Enigma? Yes.
Okay, I'm just curious. So you got to understand. So here's the thing. The Enigma, great holster. I mean, I'll give you wrong. Great holster. But it focuses on concealment more than performance. Okay. I'm a performance guy.
I understand. That makes total sense. Yeah.
Okay. Now there's a balance between that. Okay. For example, if your gun is so low, you can't get it out when you need it. Nobody cares. Right. On the other hand, if it's sitting so high, it's basically the butt of a gun is on your sternum and you're printing all over the place. Well, that's rude. Right. So you have to have that balance. Right. However, anything that sacrifices performance, I'm not interested in. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
That's not a great holster, but just the way it's structurally made with the elastic and stuff like that, the holster follows you when you draw for a good ½ inch to an inch, right? And that takes away from speed, right? Right. On the other hand, if you are a person, right, that likes to wear skirts a lot, non-belt clothing, and before you wouldn't carry a gun, and now because of this solution, you do carry a gun, that's why the Enigma is a game changer. That's why it's a game changer. But me, I never wear non-belted pants. You know what I mean?
You can say skirt. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, or skirt, man. Well, you know what I'm joking. I'm joking. When there's gym shorts and stuff like that.
Yes, absolutely. I was totally joking. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So that piece of equipment is not a solution for me in any way. Yeah. But I do see where it is for other people, and that's why it's great. You just got to think about it, right? One piece of equipment doesn't fit everybody. So, for example, my pro model from Tier 1, right, which is based on, the retention's based on the light. If you have a 5'3", 110, 120 pound woman who's very thin, my holster doesn't work for you. Because you don't have enough real estate to actually make that thing, hide that thing no matter what, right? So, again, different solutions for different people. So,
absolutely. Yeah, and it is a bit of an expensive endeavor. For those that reach out, I definitely try to help them understand what it's good for. I know yesterday I had people in my house installing security equipment, and I don't know who they are, and I was wearing leggings because I was home, and so I had my Filster Enigma on. That was the most secure way to carry. To me, it's comfortable. So absolutely, I love that you brought that up, and I hope for those of you that have maybe been considering that as a concealment method, because I mentioned it a lot on this episode, I hope that was helpful. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Yep. I would love to pivot a bit. You've instructed elite units such as the Pentagon ERT, FBI, National Tactical Training Unit, and SWAT teams across the country. What are some specific challenges these professionals face when it comes to integrating pistol-mounted optics, if any?
So if we're talking about law enforcement in general, and the caveat is, guys, I'm staying in my lane. All I teach them is performance shooting, right? I don't teach tactics or anything like that. But sometimes these guys, they've had their fill of tactics. They just want to know how to shoot faster and more accurately, right? Especially with the dot. What are some of the challenges? The quals, right? The curriculum to get them to pass the qual is not made to make the shooter better. It's made to cover the agency's butt in case something happens, right? So that's why they're very minimal standards. It's gotten worse these days. Hopefully they'll get better under the new administration. But before, there are plenty of new cops, and God bless you for choosing that profession and calling. But there's plenty of new cops that have never touched a gun or been punched in the face before. Right. So they have some challenges there. And then when they go through the training program and the academy and things of that nature, their words, not mine. They do not have the skill set to do the job. You know what I mean? So then they go out and find other, instructors and stuff like that for either the tool or the skill set they need to reach that higher level. And it is changing, very much so changing. But, they follow a book. Right. And it seems for a lot of the instructors, they're either trapped or they're have no interest in going beyond that book. Right. And the problem is that book doesn't make the shooter better. And the guy who wrote the book's not getting in trouble because he's dead because that book was written so long ago, So that's the main things of what they were taught to get through the academy, get through boot, get through whatever. And it doesn't translate in how getting better as a shooter. So those are the things, just translating it. The good news is the way I teach it is like, look, man, the laws of physics and kinesiology do not change from sport to physical activity. So let's take what you've done before, martial arts, sports, jiu-jitsu, karate, boxing, wrestling, football, whatever. And let's take those body mechanics and let's lend them to how we actually implement a gun. And because they've already done it before, it resonates with them. And the uptake and the implementation seems to be very easy. At least they get better in a 2-day class.
So based on that, what are some ways professionals like law enforcement can improve their skills besides maybe going and taking one of your classes if they don't have access to that? Would it be online training resources or any drills you recommend they do on their own time?
Well, so what do they want to get better at, I guess, right?
Okay.
As a side note, I've really, in learning how to motivate people and students, right? Part of my job's done because if they weren't motivated to learn from me, they wouldn't have paid all that money to come see me, right? But when you're talking to individual students, some of them have different motivations, different philosophies for why they shoot. And you kind of bring it out in them as to what resonates with them. And they may consciously not even know what resonates with them. So you got to look at their philosophy, right? So I have this whole kind of training regimen that I've brought in from my other experiences, whether it be business and martial arts and sports and stuff like that. And I think I've always integrated these, but now I've actually kind of, codified it, right? So when you're talking to a student, it doesn't matter who they are, civilian, professional, right? Military or law enforcement, competitor, whatever. What is your motivation, right? What is your philosophy? Why are you carrying a gun, right? And then when you get down to that motivation, right? For example, for a concealed carrier, right? The carriers conceal, they just want to protect themselves and their families. And I start teaching them an efficient draw from an ALS or a gamer rig, they're going to shut off, right? On the other hand, if I start talking about a military professional, right, or a law enforcement professional about going straight into about the rules of competition and why they should compete on top of their already busy schedule, they shut off, right? If I start talking to a competitor that may have asked me some advice on stuff and I start talking to them about, the benefits of a red dot for better situational awareness, they shut off, right? So you kind of understand what their philosophy is and why they're carrying a gun. And once you figure that out, then you can go into what's the principle of the breakdown of the thing that you're doing, right? When we carry a gun, we talk about concealment, or we talk about your tack rig or your competitive rig, where you carry, how you carry, what's optimal, all those other things. So what's the individual principle of what you're trying to do? Then what's the proper technique to implement that principle? And then you have to do the reps, right? You have to do the reps to rewrite what you used to do before. And it's not muscle memory. There's no such thing as muscle memory. Instead, I would offer that it's procedural memory. You have all these processes built in subconscious how you do things. Now, if we have a newer, efficient way based on speed and accuracy of something, you eventually have to learn how to do the principle, the technique, and then the reps to burn that in.
Wonderful. Well, I would like to go ahead and pivot to martial arts. It's one of my favorite things to bring up, especially when we have someone who's so well-rounded on the podcast. So as a lifelong martial artist with a BJJ brown belt, how has your martial arts background influenced your approach to firearms training and self-defense, particularly in close quarters, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So that's where a lot of people ask me, how was I different? How did I become so successful, even though technically I don't have a, face shooter resume, right? And it's because I finally realized that when I stopped treating shooting at least a pistol, well, really all guns, but a pistol, when I realized there's no difference between implementing that and the efficiencies of another sport or athletic event, I think my understanding and my implementation and my performance went through the roof, right? What is the study of jiu-jitsu? It's the study of efficiency and leverage. What's shooting a gun? It's the study of efficiency and leverage. That's it, right? So the understanding of what can absolutely overlap, what kind of doesn't overlap, and how to relate that into other sports and physical activities, I think is where a lot of students in my class start picking things up immediately. When they start learning it's no different, in the ring, on the mat, in the gym, on how you implement things and how you officially run a pistol, they start really picking up what you're putting down, and they relax because now it's like, oh my God, I don't have to learn a whole new bunch of physics rules just to do this gun. I fight with my left foot forward. Why do I got to stand with my feet next to each other? Right. So stuff like that. Yep. Stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've been asked that question in some of I've only taught, a handful of basic pistol classes, but women will ask me, do I need to stand side to side? And so I always ask them, like, how would you stand if someone was barreling towards you and trying to push you over? So they bring a foot back. It's usually their dominant leg. And I tell them, like, yeah, that's exactly how you would probably rear back to do some type of, force stopping kick, like a Spartan kick, a true front heel kick. And that's when the light bulb comes on and they realize they were overthinking it. So I really like that perspective. And I have my master's in exercise science, and I can say, like, all of our biomechanics chapters absolutely indicated that. Like, there's so many fundamentals throughout all sports that apply, and it's easy to overthink it, especially because a firearm is such an abnormal object to place into our hands and move around, that our body mechanics don't necessarily change because of that. So.
Right, exactly. But that. I mean, you can go into the minutia. For example, instead of putting if you're right-handed, right, instead of putting your right foot back, where's your weight going if you put your foot back? It's going back. Back. You're helping recoil. How about you put your left foot forward?
Ooh, okay.
And then you have that weight, right, unconsciously and structurally diminishing recoil, right? Or mitigating recoil through structure, not strength, especially for women. Especially for women.
Absolutely.
Right?
No, that makes a lot of sense.
One's a defensive, one's an offensive.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And what's the best defense? The great offense.
Offense. Okay. Cool. I was hoping you would answer before I did. No, that's wonderful. That's really good to know. I like it. Yeah, I'll have to start using that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, very cool. Do you have any other tips like that you like to?
2 days of tips in my class.
Ooh, I like it. Okay, cool. Yeah.
So here's one thing I talk about. Like, for example, let's take that one step further. It's like, well, Scott, high level shooters in matches all the time shoot in isosceles. I'm like, yep, it's based on context, right? But if in the class I can show you a stance, an elbow, an arm extension, a grip that accomplishes what we want to, your sights returning reliably to your point of aim, predictably every single time, and I could do it without any effort, and it's all structure, then we can extrapolate from there, right? But if you're always working, if you're standing in a isosceles bending over with your core engaged and your butt engaged and your quads engaged and everything like that, how do we add anything to that? You're already at 90% capacity. So let's learn how to do this relaxed. Then we can add other things into it. To the USPSA question, right? How many matches have you shot? You've been competing for a little bit, right? How many matches have you shot?
Yes, about anywhere from 15 to 20 at this point.
15 to 20. Okay.
Yes.
So is USPSA a shooting sport with movement or a movement sport with shooting?
Ooh.
Okay, so let me frame the question again to you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Can you shoot all alphas? If you shoot all alphas, are you guaranteed to win?
Oh, no.
No. If you shot all Charlies, is it still possible for you to win?
Absolutely. If you're moving fast enough?
Yes.
Okay.
So what is more important then?
Speed,
movement, right? And it is what it is. That's why we love USPSA, because it's not boring, right? So and in USPSA, from the matches that you've shot, what is more common? Forward movement or lateral movement?
I would say lateral.
Lateral movement. Okay. So if we base our movement on what's more important in the activity that we're doing, if lateral movement is more important side to side, right? Because of your positioning of forestop and backstop, I won't get into that. That's sciencey nerd stuff, right?
I like it.
Right. But if you have a forestop and you need to have a forestop and backstop in the direction to mitigate the force or initiate your own energy. So if lateral movement is more predominant in USPSA, right? And it's a movement sport, standing in isosceles, learning how to do that is probably more important than learning how to stand in what I call a fighter stance with your lead foot forward.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Just something to think about. You got to learn how to do both. Right? Based on the context of it.
Are you searching for a brand you can trust when it comes to shooting and gun care products? Look no further than Birchwood Casey. Since 1948, serious shooters, avid collectors, and professional gunsmiths have relied on Birchwood Casey. They've been in the game for over 70 years, providing us with products that have stood the test of time. From their legendary True Oil gunstock finish to the dependable Perma Blue, Birchwood Casey's commitment to quality is unmatched. Birchwood Casey has also revolutionized the way we train and improve our shooting skills with their innovative Shoot and See targets. These targets let you see your shots instantly, making it easier than ever to track your progress and become a better marksman. Head over to birchwoodcasey.com today and discover the products that have earned the trust of shooters worldwide. And use code SHESHIELD20 to save 20% on your order and to support the podcast. Again, that's SHESHIELD20, SHESHIELD 20 at checkout. Happy shooting.
Absolutely. Interesting. Could you, as someone who's more focused on self-defense and has used competition shooting as a way to just kind of grow a bit more exponentially rather than, slowly, would you say that it's possible to kind of adopt and maintain the right foot back or left foot forward stance, even though I'm focused on also improving on lateral, diagonal, and vertical movements? Could you say
because there's degrees of all that, right? I will, and do you need to? Is one thing, right? For example, the rounds, if we're being effective in USPSA, right, are not the hottest things on the face of the earth, right? If you're shooting a 147 at 900 feet per second, there's not a lot of recoil there, especially if you got a good heavy gun, right? So stance becomes less important when you're doing that, okay?
Right.
But if, however, you are a slighter person, you're a 5'4", 110-pound woman shooting Glock 19 with, Hornady HST, or no, I'm sorry, Hornady SWT, Hornady 135 plus Ps. You're in a certain situation where you're standing and delivering, right? Mm-hmm. You probably want to know the best way to stand, right? To mitigate that force for that powerful, round, at least compared to you, to do that, right? But just like anything else, let's learn how to do this most efficiently. Then let's stack difficulty based on the application. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, saucy is not wrong, but it's also not the best thing in every situation. Just like the fighter stance, lead foot forward, is not the best in every situation. Because what if you can't step forward?
Right.
So learn how to do both and learn the reasons why you're doing both.
I like that. Yeah. And I mentioned this when we recorded the first time, your YouTube video, the MSP 3-day path to performance, a lot of feedback your students gave was that you were able to give tailored advice based on like their body type and their shooting skills and everything. What's something over time, this isn't something we talked about last time, but what is something that has helped you as in your career, as you've progressed through teaching and you've adopted maybe different philosophies of teaching when it comes to the individuality of each person? Do you take the time to learn what each student is there for? And that helps you, or do you just kind of learn as the class goes?
At the beginning of class, I ask everybody, what one thing do you want to, if you learned one thing in this class, that would make the class worth it for you. You would check that box, right? And everybody has different answers. With the red dot class, it's usually always the same thing, right? Consistent presentation of the gun to acquire the dot every single time, and to track and to recoil. Right, you'll get some to be more accurate and things of that nature, right? You got to define what that means. So yeah, from there, and some people say faster, and then I ask, what does faster mean, right? Do you mean more consistent? Oh yes, okay. No, I mean faster. Well, give me your time then. What do you want to be? I don't know what I want it to be. Then how do you know if you hit it or not? Right? What's your baseline right now? I don't know because I don't have a shot timer. Okay, so that's what this class is for. Acquisition of that is fairly simple if you know what you're looking at, right? People can do 6 mistakes, right, to where they are not tracking the dot, and most of the answer is they're creating multiple moving axes, right? It should be your head's not moving, your arm's the only thing moving up to your eye, right, or however you present. But people do all these weird things so they think it's tactical, right? They'll bring their shoulder up, moving their eye line comes back. They'll move their head forward, so if the dot's coming up, they completely miss it, right? The whole tactical turtle thing where everything is moving, and they wonder they can't acquire the dot. When I simply show them how to stop moving in a proper presentation, and how to flatten out the grip angle of the gun, usually by 12 o'clock the first day, people don't have problems with it. Then we can work on speed and efficiency after that, getting that gun out of the holster and then acquiring a dot. So, yep, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. People ask for in the class.
That's wonderful. Yes. And I intend to be one of those students. I remember when I was a tactical turtle myself, my big thing was the head dip. And this is from no instruction and honestly not doing my due diligence and researching a proper draw technique. I remember I sent Tessa.
Well, how do you know it's a proper draw technique when they don't show you the target or the shot timer?
That's a good point. I like it. Yeah. I've been noticing that more and more, the more totally pivoting here, but the more I'm in this industry, the more I feel like I'm able to discern when people are just trying to show off versus show a skill and really just help the community. And I'm a good example. A lot of my videos are just kind of like showing my progression in USPSA, and it's just me and how I move. Like, it's just about like, I move differently now. I don't stand up as tall, even though I stand up pretty tall still. And, some of that's just my personal journey tracking. I'm not really trying to contribute much. And some videos I'm trying to, show a technique step by step. So that's something to definitely be aware of. Is that something you want to speak on anymore? I know it's always fun to kind of throw social media out in these episodes. And I think it's good to bring awareness to maybe some tendencies our community has when it comes to either misinformation all the way to maybe we're not determining our goals well enough before we're sharing.
So that's the thing. I mean, I hate misinformation in this context as much as I hate misinformation in any context, right? Yeah. Because, what is misinformation? I hold this opinion to be true. You disagree with me, so yours is misinformation. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think what we got to learn is that there's several paths to get to this same thing, depending on time and things of that nature, right? I can argue with people all day long. For example, here's one thing, right? Going to classes don't matter. Technique doesn't matter. All you have to do is do the reps and proper drills, and then you will self-discover. Sure. If you have no friends, that's all you do, and you're really, really smart, you can figure it out, right? But the counter to that is, well, what if you're not really smart? You know what I mean? What if you're not an athlete? We know plenty of people that I've been shooting for 30 years. They're like, bro, you still suck, right? You haven't figured it out. So for that guy, it doesn't work. Okay. On the other hand, right? Let's say you're the person that, I think you should subscribe to, right? You understand the philosophy while you're carrying a gun. What are the technique or what are the principles you need to do for implementation of that gun? What are the techniques that go with each part of that process? And have you done the reps? That's how I feel. And then you go to a class to shortcut all that from somebody that has done it already, right?
Right.
What if you don't have the money to do that? Then you got to go back to the first guy, right? You just have to decide which one you are. You have to decide which one you are. One is not right. One is not wrong, right? I, however, think if you have the means and necessary, it doesn't make sense not to go to a class to shortcut it, right? Sure. I mean, and shooting is simple in a lot of ways, but it's not easy in even more ways, right? So you said, what's your degree? What you said your degree was in?
My master's is in exercise science kinesiology.
Exercise science. Okay. That's your master's, right?
Correct.
Would you have figured things out you learned when you were through your master's program through just your undergrad education without any tutelage? No, you would not have. No. So why is shooting a gun any different?
Right.
Right. I know you're a very fit person. You work out, right? Yada, yada, right? You lift weights. You probably do some plyometrics, some force of strength, blah, blah, blah. Would you have learned how to do any of that if you just, here's some weights, figure it out?
Ooh, absolutely not. Yeah. It actually took about 4 different personal training coaches, and I still have a personal training coach, even though I'm a certified trainer, have my master's. Like, I like having someone that knows more than me in every facet of my life, actually. It's like,
sure. Yeah. Absolutely. But then on the other hand, you get that guy who's, or girl who's slightly off kilter a little bit, and they do genius things.
Yeah, absolutely.
They do genius things, right? Because they are unencumbered with societal norms and things of that nature, and they're able to think outside of, the box or whatever like that, and they come up with things all by themselves. Neither one's right, neither one's wrong. You decide what you want to do and get after it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that we're talking about the full spectrum here. That's always good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And since we're on this topic, what skill level should someone be to come to your class? What are some prerequisites?
So that's all in. It's all my requirements, my class prerequisites that nobody reads, but that's okay. You should all have taken one fundamentals class already. That can be a fundamentals class, that can be your enough to get your CCW or whatever, just so you're safe and you know the 4 rules of firearms, right? The other one is that you should be able to shoot dot torture at 3 yards and get at least a 45 score. If you can do that, then we have the basic tenets of marksmanship, and then I don't need to build the car, right? I can just make that car faster. And that's it. That's it.
Absolutely. And yes, I will have your website linked in the show notes, which are the notes below the title of the podcast. So if you're listening and you're interested in taking a class with Scott, you can check out his website and actually read his prereqs. But I do like to ask that on the episode. I think it's worth just a mention. I think sometimes people listen to high level shooters like yourself speak and on social media, and they may think that they're just nowhere close to being able to train with you, when really you have, first of all, varying levels of classes, and also the ability to discern what each student needs. And that's my way to encourage people to take that leap and go ahead and sign up for that class.
And other than that, I would tell you, just show up. You don't need to train for my class. Right?
Okay.
Like, what should I work on to get like, are you coming to class? Are you trying to win the class? Because that's not a thing, right? You're coming to learn my methodology, pair it up with your experiences and skill sets, right? And see if we can't get demonstrably better based on the metrics of speed and accuracy. That's it. That's it, right? Guys, if you are going to a class to impress the instructor, and maybe if there's some like business thing, like you want their endorsement or you want to be buddies with them or something like that, then whatever. But you're not going there to impress the instructor. You're there to learn their methodology and see if it's more efficient than what you had before, right? If you go to a class and all of a sudden the way the instructor treats you because you're a very high level shooter, they become your buddy or something like that, then what are they doing with the rest of the students?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've had, I don't know, about 30 plus grandmasters come to my class. Now, when they come to my class, they're trying to learn how to shoot, right? They want to see how I teach other people so they can potentially, you know, run their own business on that, okay? When they shoot very high, or I get excited when they start understanding my methodology as a training point. On the other hand, if the person who comes to a class and they have a 2-second draw and under pressure, they get it down to 150, I'm much more excited about that. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
You got to understand what each person wants out of the class. And first you have to understand the philosophy of why they're there. So,
absolutely. My favorite classes have been the ones that I've shown up and just truly acted like a student, just wanting to absorb everything, learn everything. And the ones where I showed up wanting to impress because of this online personality that I have, and like, you know, wanting to kind of like live up to my like social media presence, have been the most just unenjoyable classes. I think I felt like that a little bit at ECQC. I was so stressed at how I was shooting, and I later took it as a encouragement to just be more diligent with my firearms training. Like I neglected that a bit, and that class really brought that out. And so I wish I'd gone in originally with that, and I hope to go back and just next time have that goal to be a student. Now I'm a little closer to Craig in the professional world, so I might feel a little pressure there, which is normal. But of course,
yeah. But I mean, that's the thing. I mean, try being a brown belt or being friends with him for 10 years and then going to his class. Sorry, I got to plug this thing.
Oh, that's okay. I'll just go to the ECQC that you go to, and then I know that he'll be focused on you, and then that way I can feel better. How does that sound? Good plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, just let me know when you're going, and I'll.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, perfect. So I'd like to switch gears a bit. I mean, we've really been talking about competition shooting this whole time, in a way. You know, we've been talking about it as part of, you know, determining your goals. And of course, you teach performance mostly. So I'd love to know some key milestones in your training background to help you reach this level of skill. And also, I know we talked last episode that no one got to hear because your media didn't save, about your goals for 2025 and USPSA, and like basically from the beginning to this coming year, if you don't mind.
All right. So I'll start how I got back into shooting. I mean, I've always owned a gun, but that doesn't mean I was a shooter, right? So where I lived before in Northern Virginia, doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's impossible to train Jiu-Jitsu without training with face shooters, right? So if there were 20 dudes on the mat, at least 15 of them were either local, state, or federal law enforcement. So I had my buddy Al. He was a mobile security division guy from the State Department, and he was like a 3-year white belt because he kept on getting deployed back and forth. The problem is that he was a big dude, 6'5", 300 pounds, pure muscle, right? And he would win, and he would hurt people, or he would get hurt because it wasn't based on skill. It was based on, rage. So he was one of the other few big guys in the place. So I need a guy to train with. So I go, hey, dude, I got a key to the gym. Why don't we work out 3 times a week in the morning? I'll help you through and help you get your blue belt, and you can stop hurting other people and yourself, right? And I think about 2 or 3 months later, he got it. And he goes like, dude, I got to pay you back. I'm like, don't worry about it. You're doing the country's work. He's like, yeah, no. He's like, do you own a gun? I go, do you shoot? I go, I own a gun. He's like, well, let me show you how to shoot. And while I credit Al for getting back, the training was horrible. It was horrible, right? It was your classic isosceles, arms locked out, looking through the top of your eyelids, shoulders, all that other stuff, right? And I was like, why is this so hard? Because even back then, even though I didn't know the word, I was like, this is a gun. Gun's supposed to make things easier, right? It's a force multiplier. If our force multiplier is supposed to make things easier, why is this so hard, right? So then I realized over a couple of things that if I start treating it like I taught jiu-jitsu, right? What's the principle? What are the various techniques? And then the reps, I got better. One of the advantages that I have, and here's the thing, guys, if you want to become a high-level shooter, you have to shoot. You just have to, right? Or you have to exponentially dry fire. One of the things that I had that when I lived up in Northern Virginia, Silver Eagle Range was 5 minutes away from me. So I could go shoot whenever I wanted to, right? I was a mortgage banker at the time, so I had fairly good disposable income, and I could buy bullets and guns whenever I wanted to, right? So that was an advantage that I had. But here's the other thing I realized. When I started getting pretty good, I also realized that just like jiu-jitsu, self-defense gets real boring after about 6 months to a year. So then you want to start competing because you want to ride that lightning, right? You want to go up against people that don't know you, don't particularly care about you, and they want to win, and you want to see who you are as a person under that pressure. That's how I got into competition with jiu-jitsu, and that's how I eventually made the decision to start competing with pistols, right? First started off when I was training off, actually, where I live now, Matthews, North Carolina. I was doing a lot of business down here and shot my first IDPA-like match. And it was fantastic. It was great. The match that I shot was more like a USPSA match, just with cover, right? And the guys were great because they shot both sports. Then I got my first taste of what a really good competitor looks like, right? So I was shooting, and my buddy Jamie had taken me with him, right? And I was shooting my carry optics gun, with my dot on it, and nobody else was because it wasn't approved. So they would let you go. They would shoot you not for score. Okay? So I shot it, and I think out of 30 people, indoor small match, right? I got like 7, not bad. And I saw this one guy shoot, and he comes up, and he looked like a gazelle. It was amazing. And you've shot IDPA before, right?
Yes.
It's very hard to look like a gazelle
in
IDPA. And this guy did it, right? And it was amazing. And I was just like, I would gently go, who is that guy? Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, him? He's nobody, dude. He's like, I think he's a sharpshooter. He's just average, right? And I'm like, are you serious? He's like, no, bro, that's Morgan Allen, man. He's ranked number 2 in the country. And it's like, but what competition did is that it opened up my eyes of what a person could actually do, moving and shooting and reloading, in a something that required dynamic, all that stuff be done dynamically. And I was like, wow. And from there, I never looked back. I used to live in Northern Virginia. It was Area 8, very vibrant competition setting, and just started competing in USPSA. Met some fantastic people. Clay Clem, Shannon Campbell, Dave Wampler, Kevin Garopst, Ron Francisco, Gary Tutreau, and guys who are just absolutely fantastic. And one of the reasons why they're fantastic is most of them are law enforcement, air marshals, law enforcement, Marines and stuff like that blended, right? The reason for shooting, either work or self-defense, and by getting better in competition, right? Working on those hard skills, unencumbered by tacticalness, and how those hard skills got better. Because the ultimate goal is for the shooting to be in the background. Okay. And then you can solve whatever problem you need to solve in front of you. Again, whether it's self-defense, competition, or work. But if the shooting's in the foreground, you have no time to worry about anything else, and it usually doesn't go well. So just competing like a madman, 3 to 6 times a month up there. Made masterclass in carry optics in 2018. And then the business took off. And open enrollment classes during the weekends, so were matches. So for a long time, I had shot a match in forever. Now I'm getting back to it. I lost a whole bunch of weight recently. My knees are better. I feel better, and I'm getting back to it and doing a lot of training. I've taken 6 classes this year from some high level dudes, mainly in the competition space, and it's helped everything. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. Absolutely. When it comes to getting prepared to kind of jump back into maybe a more consistent competing routine, what has changed about your personal training? And actually, what does a average week look like for you when you're training as an individual shooter, if you don't mind?
Well, that's tough because I travel so much.
Right. Yes.
So everything or just shooting?
Let's do just shooting. And then if you would like to share kind of your fitness routine, whatever helps you kind of be more mobile and move faster, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So again, this is the advice I'll give everybody. You want to shoot less, become a firearms instructor. Right. So, yeah. Anyway. Cool. So how do I maintain mine? Right. On the road, right? Dry fire. It's in the morning, 100 draws. At lunch, it's 100 dry fire draws. At lunch, generally what I do to motivate myself is I pick either a drill or an exercise based on what I want to work on. Everything I'm doing now is movement. I focus on movement, right? A great drill out there, as everybody checked out, Gateway Defense, his 3 standards, which are both static and moving standards. You do those. It's not only a very good workout, but it's a very good metric in transferring over from what you can do over to how it would be analyzed in competition, because it's based on hit factor scoring. Donovan Moore standards. Obviously, I do mine because that's how I make my money. Right. But right now, everything I'm doing is movement. How can I move faster? How can I move more efficiently? And getting that gun to stop exactly where I want it to stop. Especially with the new tools I have, being able to bend my knees, move faster because of less weight, learning how to run again, all those other things. So that's what I do. That's what I do.
That's wonderful.
And
Absolutely.
then on the jiu-jitsu side, I try and take my gi wherever I go and my no-gi shorts.
Ooh.
I know black belts in every area. I don't go to classes in other areas because no matter how nice the gym is, they all got to protect the flag, right? And it turns into ADCC overnight, or I'm sorry, over the next 10 minutes of you introing yourself. So now I go to black belts and I get private lessons from them.
Ooh, I like that.
Try to learn their game. Yep.
Ooh, that's wonderful. Ooh, yes. That is such a good point. I've never even thought to mention this on the podcast. Taking your gear with you when you travel. I've been on the road and flying so much recently, and I was visiting someone on the West Coast, and I was able to jump into his police department, their jiu-jitsu class. I just kind of showed up and was like, hi, can I hop in here? And I had spats and a rash guard, and I had to borrow a gi. So that's next level. I need to actually take my gi with me. It's just so heavy, man. I'm already
Get the Origin lightweight summer gi.
Oh, okay. And then just
2 pounds. 2 pounds.
Oh, that's a good point. And then my spats are pretty warm. I feel like that would just give me all the warmth I need. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Okay, I'll have to do that. And I'll link them in the show notes as well. Yep. Yeah, super cool. Okay, nice. Yeah, because borrowing gis is sketchy. I really like to wash my own stuff. And anyway, but yes. So they were nice enough to let me hop in. And it was a, super just well-controlled class. They're all law enforcement, so they want to be able to go to work the next day and not be injured. Yeah. Yeah, I was lucky enough to be able to do that. But what a cheat code. I love that. For anyone listening, I hope that was encouraging, especially if you're on a jiu-jitsu journey. And yeah, with jiu-jitsu, any goals for 2025? Is it just kind of go more often, or is it compete?
Yeah. So I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 1996. I take long breaks in between, right? So right now I'm a 2-stripe brown belt. I've been a brown belt, I think, going on 2 years now or something like that. So would I like to get my black belt by the end of the year, which my professor has intimated might happen? Sure. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I mean, my big thing is whenever you go to new belt, you are the worst person at that belt. It's, I just don't, I want to be able to represent myself well and my professor well.
Right.
So if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think, I'm going to put the proper effort to do that as well.
I love that. That's super encouraging. Thank you for sharing that. I really, really enjoy when I get people on the podcast that have all the perspectives you have. Of course, there's something to be said about going into a very niche topic and staying on that for a while. But that was kind of the point of She Shield. I feel like there are a few big gaps in our industry, like weapons-based entanglement, the 0 to 5 foot range, things that like people haven't even heard of, that are, strapping a gun to themselves. So that's the goal here. And I really appreciate your perspective today. And of course on the one we already did, but that one was more of a private, I got to ask you some cool questions and I'm taking it as that. So, but yeah, we are about at time today. Before we go, I like to let the guest speakers leave the listeners with a message. Is there anything you would like to send people off with, especially going into 2025?
Yeah. So, since we're on this podcast and it's meant to motivate people to train to get better information and open awareness and stuff, I would just invite you to think about what I said before, right? As you go down and you go down this journey, understand why you are doing the journey, right? And it'll help you focus your attention, because we're all busy. We all have families. We all have jobs. We all have goals and aspirations. And, if you look at the firearms community or the self-reliant community, you have to learn how to shoot, right? You have to learn how to deploy and defend yourself against a knife. You have to do medical. You have to compete. You have to do jiu-jitsu. And then there's boxing. And then there's all these other things. My God, where do you start? You start with your own motivation. That's where you start. There was a guy, what's his name? I'm going to go with Eric. Sorry, Eric. I know that's not your name, but he lives out in Little Rock, Arkansas, right? Very good shooter and stuff. And he made this post the other day that said, like, you need to bully your friends to go compete, right? You absolutely have to bully yourselves because they're not going to know how they react under pressure, right? And competition is the best way to do that. And I'm like, absolutely right. Also, though, here's the thing. If 99.999% of all physical engagements are with the hands and not with the gun, if you don't know how to throw hands, you might be wanting. Okay? So let's bully our friends to take wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, and/or Jiu-Jitsu. Right? And then learn how to complement the gun on top of that. So, because we all know if it's a hand problem, you turn into a gun problem, that's not going to work out for you.
Right.
It's not going to work out for you. So,
absolutely.
On the other hand, you have to train all the ranges. If you're that badass dude with the cauliflower ears and a broken nose and you can choke somebody out in 3 seconds, well, what if they got your kid and they're 15 yards away?
Right.
What you going to do? Right? So learn how to train all the ranges, right? And have respect for everyone else's philosophy, right? Somebody that only wants to do self-defense, that doesn't have time to do competition, right? That dude's not an idiot. If you really care about that person enough to muck them on the internet, how about you go learn what they can't learn and help them round out the edges so that they're better within their own philosophy, right? It's the same thing with, that competitor who gives 2 craps about tactics. When they're done with the match, they put their gun away and they don't touch it till they dry fire again. You yelling at that dude's not a real, American or man or whatever like that. That dude, he's going to cut you off. And we have further divide within this industry, this community, if you want to call it a community, right? So understand what the person's philosophy is. If you can help them, help them. If you can't help them, then ignore them and move on with your own stuff. So.
Ooh, I love that.
I think that was most positive and a little pessimistic as well. I apologize, but
I thought that was great. It was a perfect balance. I think the kick in the butt and then like the pat on the shoulder, it was perfect. It was really good. Yeah. I've always wanted to just tell some of my friends that I'm taking them to dinner and then we go to jiu-jitsu instead. That's been something that I've wanted to do, but I don't know that they go to dinner with me if I did that. So then I might lose a friend. I'm just kidding. But I have dragged quite a few friends to jiu-jitsu and they may not stick around.
Some to matches. You drove some to matches. You drove some to the range and stuff like that. Right?
Yes.
You care about them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Right. The problem is that I think especially all the noise, the signal to noise ratio that we get on the internet is because people are telling other people what to do, but they don't care about that other person.
Right.
So,
yes.
Yeah. So
yeah, Exactly.
Figure out why you're doing this. If you can help other people, help them. If you don't care about them, then stop lecturing them.
I love it. Absolutely. Well, thank you for ending us on that strong note and for coming on today again. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I look forward to taking a class with you. Absolutely. For those of you interested in taking a class with Scott, again, his website is linked in the description. Be sure to read those prerequisites. He worked so hard to put those up there for you guys. But other than that, again, this episode is on YouTube. If you want to go back and watch it, you can actually see all the facial expressions. That's fun sometimes. You can see my camera turn off 3 different times and probably the frame shift a little bit. That was fun. But otherwise, guys, remember, we have highlights all over. So we have them on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Livefire, at She Shield Pod. Lisa Hamilton makes those. She spends a lot of time adding some B-roll to our guest speakers' stories to make sure we get the name of She Shield out there. We are, of course, linking anything he mentioned today. Of course, there are a few things in the last episode you didn't mention in this one. I'm going to go ahead and link those as well, just resources that you've said. And for those of you listening, if anyone you know is a firearms owner experiencing a crisis, Hold My Guns is an organization that will connect you with a local gun shop or FFL to store your firearm for you. The link to access their website is available in the show notes. Thanks for listening. In the meantime, stay safe and stay vigilant.
Attention all knife enthusiasts. Today's episode is sponsored by the one and only Cold Steel Knives. For over 3 decades, Cold Steel has been leading the way in the knife industry, dedicated to creating the world's strongest and sharpest blades. They've pioneered countless innovations that have become industry hallmarks of quality and sophistication, from their revolutionary checked Kraton handles to the iconic Tonto point blade systems. Cold Steel's progressive accomplishments have set new standards in the field. Their trademark triad locking mechanism remains unrivaled by any of their competitors, proving its unbeatable performance time and time again. Their impressive lineup goes beyond just knives. They offer swords, tomahawks, machetes, cutlery, and a wide range of tools for everyday carry. Trusted by military, law enforcement, emergency services, self-defense professionals, and martial arts practitioners, Cold Steel is renowned for quality, strength, reliability, and dependability. Where strength, safety, and performance come together for over 3 decades and counting. Use code SHESHIELD20, that's SHESHIELD 20, again, SHESHIELD20 at checkout.